So for the topic of emergency care at the golden hour, technological advancements and the way forward, with session partner StanPlus, we have very eminent dignitaries present with us. I invite Mr. Prabhdeep Singh, founder and CEO of StanPlus, to join us on stage. Next, I invite Dr. Sateesh Kumar Kailasam, Group Director for Emergency Medicine and Director, Sahrudaya American Heart Association, ITC Medicover Hospital, India. He is also the past president of Society for Emergency Medicine in India. Welcome, sir. Next, I invite Dr. Deepak Patkar, who is the Director of Medical Services and Head Imaging at Nanavati Max Super Speciality Hospital, Mumbai. Welcome, sir. Next, I invite Dr. R.K. Mani, who is the Medical Director of Yashoda Group of Hospitals, to join us. I also invite Mr. Dheeraj Rathi, who is the Managing Director of 𝐓𝐞𝐜 RKCA, to join us on stage. For this session, to join us virtually, we have Dr. Sanjeev Singh, who is the Medical Director of Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, Delhi NCR, and who is also the Chief Medical Superintendent of Amrita Institute of Medical Sciences, Kochi. Welcome, sir. To join us virtually for this panel, we have Dr. Periyaswamy Srinivasan, who is Senior Researcher, Acro Biomedical Co. Limited. Welcome. This session would be led by Mr. Dheeraj Rathi, so I hand it over to you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I guess the emergency session is something which created a bit of emergency as we start this. And this is something also important for us to understand that if we handle our emergency well, what it leads to actually defines the difference between a success or a failure. I'm honored to be a part of this August group, and something which next 1 hour or so we are going to discuss is something which is very close to my heart, purely because I had a very first-hand experience in last 2 years to observe what difference it can make if you are ahead of a disease curve or if you are providing a critical input at the right time. Just to share with the audience, I'd been for almost a decade worked in the healthcare industry and now moved more into a business side of it, not just healthcare, but the financial and the consulting space. But last 2 years, when the pandemic happened, I got an opportunity to work for Mumbai City, and we created 10,000 virtual beds. And that is something which happened in a space of 3 weeks. And the amount of innovation, technology, the amount of response which we got was probably the difference between Mumbai and rest of India. And I don't want to, at any point of time, draw comparisons, but the fact remains that not for a single day, I guess we had a challenge where the beds were not available or critical care beds were not available. Because very early on at the entire pandemic, we realized that to serve a 30 million or 35 odd million population, the infrastructure which we have is something which is going to be inadequate. And we converted what we called as jumbo facilities. And the entire technology stack was developed by our team. And that's where I think we realized that what potential it has as we move forward. And I'm really looking forward for all the inputs from the esteemed panelists. I don't think so we can have a better panel to talk about that. So to open up the discussion, if I can, from Dr. Sanjeev Gupta, just briefly, if you can take us through the mechanics of, what are the emergency care elements we talk about today, and how do we really optimize the current emergency care or urgent emergency care? And what are the innovations, some of the innovations do you see which are happening in the field, so that we all can then build upon that? Dr. Sanjeev?
Yeah, was this question to me?
Yeah, Dr. Sanjeev.
Oh,
So
fantastic.
just wanted
Thank
to
you.
just get through, if you can take us through the mechanics of how we optimize urgent or emergency care, and what are some of the innovations which we are seeing in current times which can be leveraged?
Right. Thank you so much. It's real pleasure to be sharing the platform with such great dignitaries. And there are fantastic clinicians who have done so much of good work. I think it is important to break the whole scenario into pre-COVID and COVID. And COVID taught us quite a bit. So during COVID, we at Amrita, we created a separate casualty. Being a medical college university teaching hospital, there's a casualty along with and separate emergency medicine. Both got utilized. So there is a fantastic 3D modeling software called as 𝐓𝐞𝐜𝐴, which we used, which basically gives us a very good detail of all the technology, all biomedical equipments, all utilization, equity of staffing, the length of stays at emergency, and door to provider time and things like that. And it was extremely useful when we used it. We earlier played with it, understood how it would be essential for us. But then when the stream of patients came in at our casualty, this was a big saver to sort of bifurcate these cases as confirmed or suspect and at different location, and also divide the staffing. So 𝐓�XYSIM 3D modeling software was something which was extremely easy to handle and was very useful. Other than that, whatever we used during COVID, that is thermograph, scanner, remote monitoring, I think every hospital has done fantastic work. And as you rightly said, that in Mumbai, you created something which was phenomenal. What was very good within this was that there is a point of care testing which got introduced. Because of the cost, the management and the consultants were always wary to take that decision. But because of COVID, that got introduced. And we have been doing this antimicrobial resistance planning and stewardship, and looking at these diagnostics being available bedside. But COVID has changed that scenario, and that has aided clinical decision making so much faster, easier, and it has improved clinical outcomes, because that golden hour or taking a decision is extremely important, and taking a rational decision is again extremely important, because we tend to, like in COVID, we have seen everybody has been pumped in with azithromycin, ivermectins, and hydrochloroquines and doxycyclines, and they have taken everything. But here the point of care do rationalize most of your treatment, which is important. So these are some of the important things, and it is also equally essential to have the diagnostics aid to support any of the decisions when they come with polytrauma or trauma. You have to get some of the imaging done. So we have something called as body tom, which is a mobile CT scan machine, which could be done at bedside, so that the decision, because your CTs and your MRs already have scheduled patients, but here when it is done bedside, adhering to most of the AERB norms, the decisions are extremely faster. So emergency medicine is an area where the skill sets have to be good, the competencies have to be good, the training has to be fantastic, and COVID has really top the notch for the care what is to be provided. And there are umpteen technologies with diagnostics, like RT-PCR, CBNet, TrueNet, has improved the point of care and the bedside care and the decision making. So I think there is, and the remote monitoring because of that. So there has been lots and lots of good technology, good innovation which got introduced. A lot of use has come in, a lot of good clinical impact has come in, and I'm sure we'll hear more from our fellow panelists.
Thanks, Dr. Sanjeev. What you brought out was a very important point, that the data being available at any point of time to get the right decision, and the data being available almost like as it happens. It's not that you have a lag between it. As you touched upon point of care, I mean, in each of these jumbo facilities, we had the state-of-art labs which we created, and the testing which was done was in a matter of 20 to 25 minutes, the most of the test which normally would take 24 hours. And that really helped save many lives. Now, expanding the discussion, Prabhdeep, what I would like to understand, and from you, when we talk about technology and data being available or emergency care moving as an ubiquitous solution, what are some of the concerns you would have towards that, or some of the excitements? So both concerns as well as excitements. Yeah.
Thank you, Dheeraj. At StanPlus, this is a question that we ask ourselves every day. Between us, we are the only two non-clinicians on this panel. So, everything that we say has to be taken with a pinch of startup salt, right? We come with this dream of wanting to do a lot of things, and then reality hits the moment we hit the emergency room. But everything outside the emergency room, which is in the pre-hospitalization setup, is what we at StanPlus in the emergency care, we were set up to do. And that starts with triaging and transportation. And what we realized is that there are massive gaps in how the sensing, the triaging happens. Call into a hospital that's nearby, and the questions that they ask to figure out what's wrong or what's needed, and that will tell you how difficult the scenario in the country is. So a huge challenge and an opportunity lies in effective triaging, and I'm sure the panel here will agree that we need to have better dispatching software, better dispatcher training to make sure that the right decision is taken in case of emergency. 911 in the US, 112 globally does this really well. I think India still has some way to do that. And at StanPlus, we are building technologies to enable better triaging. Then it's about destination selection or hospital choice. Who does that, right? In our industry, we have local ambulance operators who will pick a patient up and for 3,000 or 4,000 rupees, drop the patient to a nearby hospital. And we've seen through data that effectively almost half the patients end up at wrong first facility before being guided to the right or being referred to the right center. And this is by design. And I believe that at a pan-India level, there could be better technology that's available to choose the right emergency room. And the panel here will agree that not all ERs are alike. The Wednesday 2 a.m. in one ER is very different from Sunday 6 p.m. in another ER, right? Where do we have the technology to say that for a STEMI, go where the cath lab is, and if you have a suspected stroke, go where the facilities to diagnose the kind of stroke is available. So that's the triaging technology that we at StanPlus are now building. And then comes transport. We don't have an integrated transport system for patients. We don't have helivacs, we don't have air ambulances, we don't have road ambulances that speak to each other. And we genuinely believe that this is the decade when we build this in India, because unnecessary lives are lost. A, wanting for ambulances or any kind of help to arrive, and B, they don't know, as you said, point of care diagnostics, but what is the spot treatment? What are we doing when we reach is also an extremely important question. And some of it can be tech aided. There could be centralized, control towers, war rooms where doctors are enabling some decision making, because we are largely still an EMT and paramedic driven, emergency organization. We don't have enough doctors In fact, even the US doesn't send doctors, they send qualified EMTAs or paramedics as we call it. So what is the technology that we are providing them at point of care to be able to manage? We've seen from our own eyes, in our experience, someone has fallen, suspected hip or back injury, and unqualified drivers just going and lifting people from their arms and legs, right? Further worsening the morbidity. So I believe that from a triaging and transport sense, there's a lot of tech and core infra that has to be built. And when it comes to within the ER, there's enough that the panel will speak about. But our assessment there is how can we send vitals and both static and dynamic information of the patient. We heard about the ABHA card. How can we speak to the National Digital Health Mission, take that information and send it out to the ER and tell them that, hey, this is the patient, this is what we believe the etiologies are, this is what the vitals are, and this is perhaps what we recommend should be the first couple of minutes interventions. So that's the technology that we are building. Of course, multiple challenges remain, but within this challenge, we believe, and as we've raised a large enough round over the next decade, there's a lot that will be built that will be India first, and then will be transplanted globally. I'll give you simple examples. Smoke alarms should be speaking to emergency systems, right? Wearables should be speaking to emergency system. We heard about Zepto, one of the guys falling on a zip bike. The bike should be sending out information. Give me information. Tell me whether there was one rider or two. Tell me at what speed did the accident happen so that our AI can work and sense what kind of injury it could be. If there are two riders, why do I send one ambulance and not two, right? So we are on track to build a lot of this smart system and help hospitals in managing the patient better. And as claim to fame, StanPlus today manages emergency call centers and ambulance system for 40 plus large hospitals. And we are going to 200 by the end of this financial year. So a lot of data is now being used to build that system. And the last thing that I ask usually the hospital administrators, and we have some amazing people sitting in this panel, why are ambulances parked inside your hospitals? Shouldn't they be closer to the patient? Why are they parked inside the hospital? So that's what we enable them to do.
Phenomenal work, Prabhdeep. Just to share a couple of stories before I move on. As you said that non-clinicians, whatever we say, it should be taken with pinch of salt. It's not pinch of salt, but heap of salt, I would say. So that is true. But just to give you an example, when we first built the NACI center in Mumbai, that was in Feb 2019 actually. April we started building up. And we realized that once we have cracked this 700 patients in the dome, which was a stadium, and we were treating them, but we were running out of ICUs. And now how do we build ICUs? Because the moment I want to send the patients to KEMs and all that, we are guaranteeing them they're going to die. So we built containers, shipping containers. And in that shipping containers, we had actually the entire integrated systems where I was getting live data from infusion pumps, machines, monitors. Each patient had one camera, so live feed into the command center, and everything you would be able to visualize, right? So that's the type of tech stack which we envisaged and we implemented. And we got the clinicians to actually look at, and just to give you a perspective, that when we started NACI, we had 2 doctors, 12 nursing students from second year, and rest were all tech and wo fauj jo hoti hai na, just behind that jo bole so nihal, and we run. So that's how we built. So there was not much, and I'm talking about before BMC has actually jumped in. And we invited all the ICU experts there, and people said no chance. And I remember very strongly, I remember that discussion. And I'm again talking about, as Dr. Sanjeev rightly said, there is a pre-COVID and post-COVID. So I'm talking about April 2019. And we were said, no chance that you can have any patient. And I remember Dr. Mufim, myself, we were sitting, and no nurses, no trained ICU staffed. And when we spoke about whether we would be able to save any patients. And we said, sir, what do you think? What if 10 out of 8 patients succumb? And I remember the discussion we had. He said, like, even if 10 out of 10 succumb, what we are giving an experience that no one cared for me, because the patients there were someone who's anyhow were supposed to be on the floors, no one was taking. So the experience we want to give is that there was someone who took care of me and tried saving me. And with that motto, we started. And first 1,000 patients in NSCI, we had only one mortality. So that's where the tech has completely changed the perspective of what we do. But at the same time, as I said, now taking the heap of salt, so I'll go to Dr. Deepak. So, sir, as we talk about, talking about point of care diagnostic, we talk about a complete environment of conducting remote and expedited diagnostic. What are the challenges you see, as you might see, I mean, from a clinician point of view, that what are the challenges or difficulties we would face? And particularly when we are looking at, the complete ecosystem, which is not necessarily trained staff or, right type of equipment, etc. So can you just help us to understand some of that?
Technology is here to stay. Me as a radiologist, we were the first ones to use technology. Now, there was an article in Lancet last year. Which said that stethoscope is getting outdated. And Lancet is asking that question, whether the next generation of doctors, are they going to use stethoscope? The answer is no. We have a stethoscope which is replaced by a small ultrasound machine sitting on stethoscope. So we know technology is here to stay, and it is really changing the way doctors are using it. The next generation of doctors will probably use technology much more effectively than the current generation and maybe the last generation that we have seen. So I had a teacher who used to say, I smell mitral stenosis. I can feel obstruction without looking at X-ray. That is completely a goner. You have to have a complete aid of technology to make a quick diagnosis. You can't open an abdomen today without using technology, without doing a CT scan or using an AI aid or whatever. But as we move on, as you said, next decade is what we are looking at. Technology is here to stay. What we need to do together, you as the unicorns, the technologists, and we as doctors, is create an infrastructure where training happens. So currently the way we are trained in medical schools is completely different. Technology doesn't come there. When you start working on your gadgets and instruments, whether it is robo, whether it is just simple packs or emergency medicine, point of care, or even EMR. How many people are using EMR today in the city of Bombay? Unless you're trained right from your medical school days, people feel that you're not looking at patient but typing out. That has to change. That has to become a part of training. So training is the first and most important thing. Second is the infrastructure. So city like Bombay had the infrastructure and you could create it in a month's time, 2 months' time, whether it is Dome or whether it is BKC or whether within our hospitals like Nanavati, we overnight changed our beds from 450 beds of complete non-COVID to 150, 200 beds of COVID over a period of 2-3 days, and we thought it was impossible. We did that, and when the second wave struck, again we changed that. Third wave, we changed it overnight. So all of us learned how to sort of turn around things very quickly. Legality is another thing that we have to look at. There are laws are very, very loose. Who should use what? For example, POCUS, we have POCUS. We could have used ultrasound in emergency room along with CT scan or X-ray. The PNDT says you cannot touch a probe unless you have 3 years of training. You don't require training to look at pleural effusion and whether the heart is beating or no. So laws have to be sort of, all of us have to work together to change these laws. These are anarchic laws which do not allow a lot of things to be done by doctors. Again, between doctors and paramedics, who should use what? There has to be some overlap. There has to be some training. You have to elevate your nurses. You have to elevate your technologists so that they can use things optimally. doctor cannot be there across India 24/7. Majority of the work can be done by technologists if you train them well. Nurses, if you make senior nurses, they can become physician assistant. So all of us have to do a lot of things to change this. Third thing is availability of technology at the village level. So you have a CT scan, which is there across taluka places in Maharashtra. There are 450 CT scans put up by government of Maharashtra. Problem is there are no technicians. There are no radiologists. And there's no infrastructure where everything can be kind of hub together. So you have a hub which takes care of the reporting part, planning part, what is important, what is urgent, what is not so urgent. AI can be used very effectively. We have everything, but putting everything together is becoming a big challenge. The third thing is how you can put the private players and public players together and optimally use the super specialists for super speciality. We today have a situation where people are doing their bond. After doing your MD and DM, you're doing a bond of 1 year, and because there's no availability of that specialty in the given hospital, you're working like a GP. So all of us have to put together their efforts and thought processes so that everybody's utilization is to the optimal level, the level of training that we have achieved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Doctor. I mean, what you touched upon is very relevant. Like, it reminds me of the days in 2003, 2004. I was head of South Asia for Johnson & Johnson Medical. And I had two countries which were very contrast. One was Sri Lanka and one was Bangladesh, which I was in charge for. Sri Lanka, at the basic infrastructure level, had phenomenal medical care because of the cleanliness, less population. Bangladesh, on the other hand, had large population, less resources. And there, the two different mindsets I could see. So we were transiting from the open surgery to laparoscopic surgeries. And I remember Sri Lankan surgeons would always say that, look, unless you get a feel of tissue, you can't do that. So laparoscopy had only as a limitation. While there, the patient, the doctors in Bangladesh would always say that, Dheeraj, I want to learn laparoscopy because laparoscopy is not for the rich. It's for the poorer. Because he cannot afford to wait 10 days to heal because he has to go back to work much faster so that he can earn his daily bread. So I need to penetrate that. And I don't need to say that, look at both the economies 15 years down the lane, where one has reached and where the other has moved to. So what you said is absolutely correct, that that entire ecosystem has to leverage technology, but in probably in a guided way. And thanks for this insight. Now moving to Dr. Mani, as we got the insights that look, the legal, the paramedical, the training staff, all has to come to create an ecosystem. What do you see as an opportunity to collaborate with various stakeholders on a larger platform? So may it be medical devices, may it be the government, may it be the general physicians. So how do we can create a comprehensive system for a high quality or patient-centric care? And what would be the way forward for that?
It's a very fundamental but extremely important question. The way forward, you've just asked that question. I worked in Mathura for 4 years. See, I deliberately went in and I was a CEO of Nanavati Healthcare, and I also functioned as a clinician plus administrator, a dual role. I wanted that because this has been going on in the mind that, what we are doing in the city, it's an ivory tower practice. We are really cut off from reality. Go 25 kilometers from Delhi, you have a different century. Okay, you can't. In fact, there are areas away from Mathura in the interiors where even an ambulance cannot reach. Okay, and I saw a huge number of problems, medical problems, which were very life-threatening. They needed urgent care and they were extremely salvageable. Okay, far more salvageable than in the metro city. Here you would get diabetic ketoacidosis patients in their teenage, undiagnosed, they come for the first time in ketoacidosis, highly highly satisfying from an intensivist point of view because the salvage rate is very high. But questions are huge that why are they coming so late? Why? And if this modern hospital didn't exist there, they would have to travel another 20, 30 kilometers to Delhi for these problems. They may die on the way, or they may not be able to afford. They may not get the access. So there were barriers to access, which was very striking. There were snake bites, okay? I've never seen so many snake bites in one go within a couple of years in my entire career of 35 years, okay, as I saw in a concentrated way. They're extremely salvageable. See, from a salvage point of view, extremely high. Now, it was also a little, you had a heartbreak looking at that. Are we going to bridge this gap ever? This gap is almost of a century in so many different ways. You can write a book on it. However, when you saw COVID, of course, we went through a huge crisis in the second wave. Okay, we really had very difficult time when we couldn't. In some people didn't have access to oxygen even. Forget about hospital. And myself I created a COVID center in Yashoda. From no COVID bed to we created a 60 bed and then had 200, a facility for 200 patients of COVID, it gradually increased over a few weeks. We opened 3 ICUs and all. So this is doable. And then I'm so pleased to listen to Prabhdeep, so pleased to listen to you, that these are the sort of technologies we need. And, and I'm extremely pleased to listen to Dr. Patkar. Practical wisdom, that look here, you have to have the clinical centrality around which we must develop the technologies. Technologies are expensive, but they can be cost effective and they can be cost reducing if used judiciously. As you gave the example of limited access surgery versus open surgery. They actually reduce costs and improve the lives of millions. So what I want to say is that to get patients in time and for patients to have the golden hour utilized properly, the biggest gap, I think, is at the ambulance level, pre-hospital. Once they enter the emergency, of course, all these technologies are available, point of care and a CT scan and a doctor. What about a trauma case, 50 kilometers from the city? What happens? Our ambulance is a structure which is so very loose. Not many cities have a centrally controlled ambulance service. We talk about 999 and other services. They're highly developed, centralized ambulance services with their trained staff. And point of care technology is applied there in the ambulance. Point of care diagnostics, the sugar level or a top eye can tell you what's going on, and you transmit this message in time to where the receiving hospital. That's how you can reduce the golden hour. The golden hour begins from the time the injury takes place, not at the time the patient enters the hospital. This we must remember, and this every advanced country has recognized. You need volunteers in the community to be able to do CPR, and you need systematic training approaches, which should include simulations, where that's where your technology comes in. No, we train extremely well if we simulate it, the situation simulated, and we train accordingly. And we do that at the doctor and nursing training level, but we are not doing that at the community level. We should extend all this to the drivers and the ambulance servicemen. We don't need a doctor to be there everywhere. We don't have enough doctors. So we have to develop this group of healthcare workers, upgrade them, upgrade the nurses. Dr. Patkar said, clinical assistant, upgrade the technologists, and then upgrade the community. So we need to urgently look at a network of ambulance service, which is also connected to a network of hospitals, receiving hospitals. We cannot function as in silos, in separate identities. I think then we will not deliver, the golden hour service. It's not possible without a network. You see, COVID taught us how Italy created a hospital network, be able to deliver, care for all the seriously ill COVID. So I would like to look at that. I would like to look at the developing EMR further, having a connection between ambulance service and the receiving hospital, making point of care technologies, handheld technologies cheaper and more accessible. And lastly, of course, going to the interior. This country needs to go into the interior. We can't just develop the metros. No longer that's possible.
Thanks, Dr. Murali. What a golden words I would say for advice and roadmap. And I resonate a lot of it because in one of the assignments where we work with Niti Aayog, we were looking at how India can become a $5 trillion economy, and I was surprised that one of the fundamental pillars they build is around healthcare, medical, and the economics which is there in that. Creating a complete network, reach out, and also attract medical tourism. And this we did it like in the second shift of the PM current regime coming in. Of course, after that COVID came, and it got proven that what capacity as a country we had. It always used to intrigue me that we have one of the best doctors in the world. Globally, when you go, you will see one of the best clinicians coming from India. We have got one of the best IT experts in the world. We have one of the best biomedical science or engineers coming to this. But somehow when it comes to integrating all of that and create a complete infra and industry, we always miss the boat. But COVID has given us an opportunity. And sir, you touched upon 2 points. One, that any solution which we make, the clinical centrality is paramount. And that's something which can't be expressed or said enough. And second, you talked about creating a ubiquitous infrastructure which is available everywhere. So in that way, I would invite Dr. Sateesh here. How do you see the role of then emergency care or emergency care department or specialist if we really get the infrastructure reaches to the villages, or it becomes a complete networked infrastructure, as Dr. Mani was saying? So what are the shifts which as emergency care professionals and departments they will have to make to serve that type of network?
Thank you. Before I start about the digital developments of the golden hour, I just want to tell about how why EMS, emergency medicine, is different from other specialties. It's a dynamic location where we all work, and we don't know what happens in the next second. Patients will not come with the diagnosis in their hands. Patients' relatives will not come for all accidents. Patient friends will not come, the road traffic accidents, whatever. We will have a limited information in the first hand and very less breathing space we have. And we have to triage, diagnose, investigate, and start the golden hour management. What we do. Unfortunately, we have very limited doctors, paramedics, technicians, nurses who choose this profession, who are skilled and trained in this specialty. Our Prime Minister has a vision to develop the Institute of Emergency Medicine specialty in all 450 medical colleges by 2022 itself. That's a good idea because we need a lot of skilled professionals to treat all the patients. First of all, I would like to know we have to train our doctors, nurses, paramedics, definitely. And in this group, how many of you know how to do a CPR? How many of you know how to do a CPR? I'm happy I can see some hands. I didn't see a defibrillator in this Geo World Trade Center. I didn't see a defibrillator. I don't know. If I had a cardiac arrest here, who can help me? Not an ambulance here. See, there is a good Samaritan law.
a lot of people we don't know, we are some of hesitants to save or help a victim who's on the roadside. We are little hesitant. If it is a female, more hesitant. So there's a good Samaritan law. You can attempt to save any life of a patient or any human being, and you will be not asked your name or phone number, or you will not asked to sign any document in the hospital. We all should know the good Samaritan law. Those things are missing in our culture. Why we are almost 50, 60 years behind in emergency golden hour care when compared to the European countries? Why? This is the main thing. And sorry, I will take a little time, don't mind. When compared, you see, if I'm an emergency physician sitting in the ER department, my question for the doctor in the emergency department, a patient comes to the ED with a chest pain. I know how to deal with the chest pain. I take an ECG, I diagnose the ECG, I do an echogram, I'll call the cardiologist. Problem is, patient is a credit patient, patient is a cash patient, patient has money or not, patient has insurance or not. Whether I should think of that and I should think of a treatment. And ambulance doesn't know the patient should shift to a government hospital, a public hospital, or a private hospital, or chest pain patient should go to a cath lab hospital or a non-cath lab hospital. These trainings, these education should start at community level, not at the hospital level. Each human, each citizen, you should right to help others. Every citizen must and should know how to do CPR. Their family, if they can, see, I have trained almost 10,000 people in chest compressions in last my 10 years. Problem is one more thing here. The patient comes to the ED and see my face, you are a junior doctor. Emergency medicine is 20 years old in India. I'm 40 years. I will not have gray hair. So problem is you need to recognize who are people trained. So people are young people are there in the emergency departments. They are very, very skillful. Problem is we have more number of cardiologists than emergency physicians in India. We see a lot of, because I know I have 10 people, we are there in 10 doctors emergency department. I have 22 cardiologists in my hospital. See, it's true. It's not only my hospital, it's everywhere. Why I am talking all these things, we have to do skill development programs. We have to train our own people. Emergency care, golden hour care should not start at emergency department, should start on road, should start on your at your home, should start at PHC level, CHC level, or nursing care level. If we start training them, then we can think of the next level at digital. Why I am talking this EER concept, like a freelancing emergency departments, emergency EER. If I train 10 doctors who are working in the primary healthcare centers, how to identify anaphylaxis. If I can have an interface, we all know how to use WhatsApp. We came to know how to use Zoom. Even my children came to know what is Zoom, how to mute, how to unmute because of COVID. But if every doctor, paramedic, nurse knows in the primary health center how to connect to a doctor, if I have an interface that I can see 10 paramedic healthcare centers in my command center, I can train them when you need to approach me, when you need to call me. For each and everything, you need not call me. If I have a vitals checklist, if you are beyond this vitals, if the abnormals or vitals are abnormal, then you call me. I can definitely help. But to do that, I need more doctors and trainees to train them, definitely. One more thing is ambulances. Yes, I definitely agree. We have to have a network of ambulance system. Those are very, very trained, well-trained, well-educated. Where to shift the patient first? How to triage the patient? We have seen a lot of celebrities coming to our EDs. We have done the 30 minutes, 45 minutes care, whatever, which changed completely their outcomes. Because the first 1 hour, what it starts, completely change their outcomes. If they stop the bleeding on the road, that's enough. He will not go into hypovolemic shock for next 20 minutes. By that time, he will be in good hands. If they identify stroke, how many of you know how to identify stroke? This is e-fast. Whatever. This training should start in community, schools, colleges, societies. Then it is easy for us. We will not waste time because the time will not be wasted outside. They will come to ERs. then we can start treating them. So whatever if we have national highways, if anybody has a cardiac arrest, I didn't see defibrillators anywhere, because we should have a national highway. I saw national highway ambulance, especially I think you can see in Mumbai highway also, but most of them are owned by drivers. There is no technicians and no doctors. Yes, we are lack of doctors and technicians, but why can't the drivers not trained in doing a CPR? Why are not trained in control of bleeding? Why they're not trained in identifying a stroke, not identifying a MI, whatever. If we have an interface, if all the stakeholders come and sit together and talk about that, then we'll be definitely expecting a golden hour care in a great level at everywhere in India.
Phenomenal. When I started this conversation, I had no idea that it will be so relatable. Dr. Naveen, Sanjay, kudos to you to get such voice of health, to be truly presenting to the audience. I would strongly suggest we actually get some of these clips made, and there's so much of understanding and clarity of how we can build our systems. And why I say that, and there are two incidences which I again recall of the times. One, when I was working in Bangladesh, there's an NGO called Friendship, which serves 50 lakh population which lives in the Chor area. And Chor is like the deltas of Brahmaputra, where you have the water flowing in. So there's nothing permanent. So the moment the water comes in, suddenly the land would disappear. 50 lakh people, they will put everything on the boats, and then they will find a new land. So to provide healthcare system for those 50 lakh people where land itself is not available, can you imagine that? And that NGO does that. And we used to have these ships and country boats which were converted into ambulances, and I used to take the doctors to do some surgery. And there I've seen not even educated people doing surgeries of removing the tumor, because over a period of time they've been trained. So community health of how it has been.
I think the technologist, sir has spoken. Who will do deliveries and cesarean sections in PHCs? An MBBS doctor is eligible to do everything, because if I'm trained, I'm skilled, if you're not helping, that is your fault.
No, that's absolutely. I mean, when you brought out the point, and the memory flashed in my mind that there's 50 lakh people trained by community, and the amount of, I'm not saying it's comparable to metros, but yeah, there is a complete healthcare system which was built. And parallel to that, one incident last month, I don't want to talk the hospital, in my own family, I took my wife in the middle of the night because she was having an abdomen pain. I spoke to Dr. Mufi again, he's our family friend. He said, immediately get her there. And their emergency department, they said, no, there's no vomiting, so there's no risk. So you please come in the normal time. Purely because not of the skill, but the mind was occupied. I don't have beds. Where do I do it? What do I create it? I don't want to create a hassle. Sent it back. Next day, we realized that she had a burst of appendix. And that could have really, really created, and when you said that, the whole piece came to my mind of saying that what you're saying is absolutely, that how do we create a complete emergency system in the society, in the community, not restricted to the hospital.
I would like to add something.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine staying in United States, California. So his father was 85-year-old, had cirrhosis of liver, bled through his mouth, nobody at home because everybody was at work. There's no mobiles then, I'm talking about 20 years back. He pressed 911 and he fell down unconscious. Could not answer. Police came, picked him up, took him to the hospital, gave 10 bottles of blood because blood group was known being on UHID, saved him, then called the family after 6 hours when he was stable, and he was alive for next 20 years.
Phenomenal.
And here is a doctor who was going from Mumbai to Pune in Deccan Queen, got heart attack at Dadar station before alighting the train, tried to reach Hinduja Hospital. Peak time, 6 p.m. at Dadar, you can understand.
Yeah,
he died on the way.
Sure. Phenomenal.
Two extreme cases.
Phenomenal.
The reality in the country, and we must understand that technology is an infrastructure, but the expertise and the culture of the ecosystem, these are extremely important. You apply any technology. That's right. So we are able to use the GPS system for everything except to connect a critically ill patient to the right hospital nearby, because we have not created a network of hospitals. See, through the GPS system, you can easily send the patient to the next nearest hospital. We don't have to have a specific hospital, depending upon what we have diagnosed, in the ambulance. As you said, but we have many barriers. See, the barriers, as Dr. Sateesh pointed out, whether paying patient or non-paying patient, TPA patient, CGH, we must rationalize all this. There's no way we are going to continue with the same sort of system, and we talk about cutting edge technology without relating it to the realities on the ground.
I think Dr. Mani and Dr. Patkar both of you have just given the investor pitch that I used to give. So this is precisely what we are trying to solve. But the challenges are that it also requires alignment of interest with employer, with insurance, with TPAs, with real estate infra like this convention center where thousands and thousands of attendees are there. So as Dr. Sateesh said, right, we need to solve it at a community level. Right. So what at StanPlus we are trying to do is we are trying to go and educate the kids in schools, not only on CPR, but also what happens if something happens to their parents and their grandparents. Sometimes kids are the smartest to react.
So Prabhdeep, I would just get a quick viewpoint before we move to the last question from you and Dr. Sanjeev. Please feel free to add. So we have talked about, one is the human element and the challenge and the barriers which we have seen from the human element, from the creating a technology, training, from creating the ecosystem, from the human side that we need to train. What barriers or challenges or issues which we need to address from a technology and the other aspects which you think? I mean, not the human part, but what are the challenges do you think in your mind which one needs to address to create this ecosystem? Dr. Sanjeev, you can also join in for this input.
So what Dr. Deepak mentioned about his your friend's experience in the US, there's a very, very important technology there called geolocation, right? In which the landline is able to actually send information to 911 on the address. That's a very vital information system that's missing in the country, right?
And the data, the healthcare, the data which actually gets,
I think
it's available on the cloud for
absolutely. With UHID, over the next decade, we'll solve that.
But not decade. I mean, we can actually practically do it in a year's time. But
yeah, I believe it will take off like UPI, right? Health Aadhaar, because we would love to know. You mentioned anaphylaxis, right? We would love to know if someone is prone to allergies. So it is very important for us to also engage startups and community to engage with authorities like TRI to actually encourage them to enable for emergency response, giving out the location-based identification. Yep. So simple thing, but regulatory challenges.
I mean, this discussion is extremely interesting. So I'll invite Srinivasan sir. So as we wrap this complete engaging discussion, what would be important to understand is our alignment to WHO's global strategy on digital health, 2020 to 25, and what type of research you hope to see in near future, which can aid to the notion of right patient, right treatment, right time, and anything which you think from a biomedical research point of view is something which would be interesting. Srinivasan?
Yeah. Yes.
I think you're not audible. Is it mute? You'll have to unmute it, I think.
So, can you hear?
Yeah, now we can hear. We can hear now. Technology always at a base level needs to get corrected before you. That's one thing which we learned when we served our first patient in SCI. We had 3 layers of oxygen supply, and we forgot that, you're not audible to us.
Okay.
Maybe you'll have to just take the earplug out and you can actually speak without that.
So what we do at 𝐓𝐞𝐜 Biomedical is we produce biomaterials which can be applied to specific counterpart of the defect tissues in humans for treating tissue and organ damage. We believe that by providing right extracellular matrix scaffold for defect tissue with the help of stem cells and cytokine molecules from the patients, the defects can be timely repaired. So we foresee in the near future the research on preparation of natural ECM scaffold from various tissues and organs for tissue engineering will be crucial for patient care in near future. So basically we produce extracellular matrix scaffold for blood clotting and also matrix for accident injury and trauma injury, burn injury. Yeah, that's what we do in 𝐓𝐞𝐜 Biomedical.
So basically, what we have understood in the last 45 minutes to an hour is that if we can create a unique system of community training, the emergency department and emergency specialist has to move out of the department and be part of the community system. We can use the entire data at a central place, which is possible with the cloud system and available ubiquitously. And the entire technology stack like geolocation, putting it into ambulances, and getting the information ahead of the disease. If we can get that, I think we can save many more lives. Yeah.
Someone has mentioned about the EMR. That's true, actually. EMR helps a lot. See, I head the Department of Emergency at the group level for Medicover. I have 18 branches. I look after 18 emergency departments. I can see if someone calls me, check for this patient, I can see in 2 minutes about this patient because all of us follow the EMR, same EMR. If that connection is there, at least some of the chain of hospitals, and if some of the public hospitals, we have a good commandant hospital where the trained doctors are there 24/7. If they follow the technology so that they can see the images, packs what we use, the images and reports, and they can definitely give the right treatment and guide them easily. So that's what the importance of EMR. Still, a lot of us do not hesitate to start the EMR. Everyone starts, but it's true. We have to adapt to the system and we need to innovate and improve ourselves to the next level. EMR helps a lot. Coming to the freestanding emergency departments, I think people have to come up, either private sector or public sector. They should invest in the emergency medicine departments. They should start freestanding emergency departments so that we can save more lives and we can give the right treatment in the golden hour.
No, absolutely. The entire ecosystem has to come together to save lives. And just to wrap up of what Prabhdeep said, in fact, during the pandemic, Pan IIT, I'm a part of a group where all 30,000 IIT alums who are contributing towards social causes, we actually got a funding of 1,000 crores by the government of India to just fuel ecosystem of startup into this, provided we can raise 1,000 crores more. And within 1 month, we closed 2,000 crores to match up the 1,000 crores to the government, because not only India, but UAE, Saudi, so we got 500 crore from Abu Dhabi fund. Because going forward for an aging population, the hospital system and the healthcare has to move, or emergency care is to move out of the hospital. And to create that ecosystem, it was a fantastic conversation. I thank all the panelists. I have so many questions in my head coming in that once we solve this, what will be the problems there? But I think we'll take it off the table. Or maybe next 2 years, we do some work, and Dr. Naveen, we get an opportunity to show the progress card and say that what next session can be. I really thank all the panelists. It was a fantastic conversation, and thank you for the patient hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Rathi, for so expertly leading this session. It was super engaging. As we are super short on time, I request Dr. Nitiraj Gandhi to please felicitate Mr. Prabhdeep Singh. Next, I invite Mr. Akhil Ganatra to please felicitate Dr. Satish Kumar Kailasam. I invite Dr. Nageshwar Rao to please felicitate Dr. Deepak Patkar. I invite Mr. Kaustubh Chatterjee to please felicitate Dr. R.K. Mani. I invite Mrs. Elizabeth David to please felicitate Mr. Dheeraj Rathi. Thank you to all our guest speakers, both present, both physically and virtually. We now begin our next session.